shelf or somebody.
We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav Beis Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top of the Yamud, Tana Rabbanan. This is talking about the halacha of Nirtza. Eved Nirtza. Yeah, this is volume 2. Okay. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Braise. Im Omar Yoimar. It speaks over here about the Eved that says that he wants to remain an Eved, and this is where the piercing of the ear, the Ritzia, comes in. So the double lashon of Omar Yoimar, Achi Yoimar v'yishna. This is only if he says, he requests that he wants to remain an Eved twice. Omar b'tchilas sheish. If he said in the beginning of the 6 years that he wants to remain an Eved, v'lo yama b'soif sheish, and he did not repeat again in the end of 6 years, so then ein an irtza. He does not go, the Ritzia doesn't take effect. Shenemar lo eitzei chavshi achi yoimar b'shas yitziyeh. What he's saying is, lo eitzei chavshi, I don't want to go free. So if he said it twice in the beginning, it's not going to be good because then it's not the time when he goes free. It has to be at the end before the time that he goes free. But if he says at the end, when he's going free, at the end of 6 years, that he doesn't want to go free, he didn't say anything in the beginning of 6 years, also ain't an irtza. He also doesn't go free. You don't do the ritzia, that is. Shenemar im Omer Yoimar Eved, Achi Yoimar Kishahu Eved. Eved means he has to say when he's still an Eved. Okay, so the Gemara here will explain what the Braise is saying. Omar, we just said here, Omar betchilas sheish, v'lo Yomar b'soif sheish. He requests to remain in the beginning of the 6 years, but he didn't say anything at the end. So ein an nirtza, there's no ritzia done. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Loi eitzei chavshi, that he's saying that he doesn't want to go free. So that refers only at the end when he's going free. But my area, why do we have to learn this out? That he requests to stay with his master at the end of the 6 years, and we learn it from the lashon of Leitze Chavshi. Typically, why don't we understand this? Because the Be'inon, we need that what he's saying is Ahafti es Adaini es Ishti ves Bane. That he says that he wants to remain with his master because he loves his wife, his children, and Veleke. In the beginning of the 6 year, that's not the case. We're talking here about his wife and his children, which is the Shivcha Cananis and her children. So in the beginning of the 6 years, he doesn't have that wife yet, he doesn't have those children yet. So the whole thing of him remaining and doing the Ritzia is only because he says Ishti is Banai. Vesu, another question on the second case of what the Braise spoke about. It says that if he requests at the end of 6 years that he wants to stay. She didn't say anything in the beginning. Also, in Nirtza, Shanema ha-eved, because he has to still be an Eved when he's requesting to stay. So the Gemara asks him this, Atu soif sheish lav evedu? At the end of sheish, so it sounds like what it means is on the last day. And he says then he still wants to be an Eved. So true, it's the end, but he still is an Eved. So why is the Gemara saying that if he only said this b'soif sheish, he's not an Eved anymore, so it doesn't work, but he's still an Eved on the last day? Answers the Gemara, Omar Rove, my betchilas sheish. Says one gersa here in the Gemara. What does it mean when it says the beginning of sheish betchilas pruta achreina? So the Gemara here, Rove will explain both the expression of tchilas sheish and soif sheish in the Braise is not referring to the beginning of when the person was the Eved, and when it says at the end, it doesn't mean the whole entire last day. We're talking about on the last day itself. We're referring to this last day as Tchilas Sheish and as Soif Sheish. What's the difference? B'tchilas Sheish means B'tchilas Pruta Achreina, the end of the day. If there's still a value of a Pruta for the Evet to work, that's called, in the Lashon of the Braise, Tchilas Sheish, because it's still not that last moment of Eitzei Chavshi, when he's going free. So that's still connected to, the entire beginning when he served as an Evet. So that's included in Tchilas Sheish. My b'soif sheish, b'soif pruta achreina. Soif sheish means that it's mamish, the very last moment, and there's not even a pruta left for his work, and he's working the very last moment. That's what's called soif sheish. And that the Braise says that it has to be when he's requesting to stay with his master. It has to be from before that pruta achreina, and it has to be at that time mamish eitzei by the pruta achreina when there isn't any more a value of a pruta for him to work. So therefore it answers both questions. The tchilas sheish is when he already has the isha ubanim that he was married to, and soif sheish when the Braise says he's not an eved anymore because it's that very last moment when there's no shava pruta left, so doesn't have a shava pruta anymore of him being an eved.
You have to bring in a persona, not to shots and
It has to be mamish. He has to say it at that very moment, right? Correct. Tan Rabbanon, and another brayso we learned about this. What the Eved has to demand in order to stay with his master to do the ritziyah. Loy ishu banim. If he has his wife and children here from the Shivcha Cananis that he married, but Rabbi ein ishu banim. His master is not married, doesn't have a wife or children. Then ein nirtza. The ritziyah is not done. Shenemar ki ahevcha ve'ez beisacha. I love you and your house, the people in your house, meaning that the master also has a family. The opposite, l'rabba yishu banim, his master has a wife and children. V'lo yein yishu banim, he does not have a wife and children. This Shivcha Cananis that he married, ein nirtza. There's no ritziyah either. Shenema ahafti esadayni, but he also says asishti v'esbana, his wife and children that he married over here in this avdus. Who ayev es rabbi, if the slave, the Eved Ivri, loves his master and wants to remain, but v'rabbi yein ayev, his master is not interested. His master says enough, time to go. Then ein nirtza. There's no ritziyah either. Shenema ki toiv loy imach. It's good for you with him, meaning with him that he's like you, the same. Rabbi oyavoy, if it's the opposite, that his master would love him to stay, but v'hu ein oyev es rabbi, he doesn't love his master and he's interested in leaving, so ein nirtza, there's no ritziyah either. Shenema ki ahevcha, that the Eved loves his master and he wants to stay. Hu chayle, if the Eved is sick, and his rabbi, his master is healthy, so they're not in the same condition health-wise. Also, ein nirtza. Shenemar ki toiv loy imach, that the toiv, that you're in a good condition health-wise, just like your master, have to be the same. So if rabbi is chayle and v'hu ein chayle, the same thing. If the master is sick and he's not sick, ein nirtza. Shenemar imach, that you're good with him, like him. Again, the same thing. You have to be both the same condition health-wise. You have to both be healthy.
What's ritziyah?
Again?
Ritziyah?
The piercing of the ear for him to stay for past 6 years. So on this last point, Rav Beve Bar Avaya asks, Shneim chayla. How about if they're both sick? So now they're both health-wise, they're in the same condition. They're both not healthy, they're both sick. So what's the halacha here? Is there a ritziyah or not? Do I say imach ba'inon, that the pasuk says that he has to be like his master? So if he and his master are both sick, so then it's imach, it's the same. You have to be, the emphasis here is the toiv, that you both have to be in a good condition health-wise, and v'aleke. So if they're both sick, it doesn't work. Teiko. So this is not answered here. It remains unresolved. Tana Rabbanah, we learned in the Braisa, when the pasuk says ki toiv lo imach, that your slave has to be good with you. What does this mean? We had this before this Braisa. That means even while he's a slave. Imach b'maychel, when it comes to food, he should be just like you. Imach b'mishta, when it comes to the drinking, like you. Shalei hey ato eichel pas nekiya. It can't be that you're eating clean, good bread, better quality, and v'oichel pas kiba, and he who eats the inferior quality bread. Ato sheisi yayin yoshan, you drink good flavored old wine. V'hu sheisi yayin chodash, and he drinks newly pressed wine. Ato yashna gabi meichin, you're sleeping on nice cotton pillows, or v'hu yashna gabi teven, and he sleeps on straw. From here it was said, if you buy for yourself a slave, eved ivri, that is kaina od latzmai. It's like you're buying a master for yourself, and the reason is because if you only have one available, so you're gonna have to give the better one to your slave and not to yourself. So he comes out to be on a better treated than yourself. Tana Rabbanan, and another braysi we learned. It says in the pasuk, "V'yatsa me'imach hu ubanav imay." When a slave leaves his master after 6 years, so he leaves from you him and his children along with him. Amar Rab Shimon, so Rab Shimon said about this, Hu nimkar banav ubnaisav minim karim. If he was sold as a slave, so his family was sold as a slave along with him. So Rashi here says, when it speaks over here about Hu banav imay, it does not refer to the children that he had if he married a Shifcha Cananis when he was a slave. That Rashi brings as a different pasuk where it says Isha v'yiladel. Bottom Rashi over here in the Amid. But over here, when it says "V'yatze b'imachu banav imay," it's referring to the family that he had before. He was married before, and now he got acquired as a slave. So it says in the pasuk that his children are leaving with him. They never got sold together with him. Why are they leaving with him? So mikan, from here we learn out sheraboy chayev b'mezainis banav, that his master has to feed his family, his children as well, when he's acquired as a slave. A similar thing you learn out from another pasuk. If he's married So then his wife leaves with him when he leaves as a slave. So again, Amar Rab Shimon, Hum Nimkar, if he was sold as a slave, Ishta Minim Keres, was his wife sold as a maid as well with him? But it's not Mikan. So from here we learn Rabbi that the master has to feed his wife along with him when he's bought as a slave. The Gemara explains that the pasuk had to teach this halacha that the master is obligated to feed his family, the children, and obligated to feed the wife. If we would only say that the master has to feed his children, I would say the reason is because they can't work for themselves and to earn money for food. Talking over here about children that are ketanim. So therefore the master, if you're buying a slave that has children, it's going to be your obligation to take care of these children. But his wife, which could work for herself and earn money and feed herself, let her work and feed herself. So the pasuk has to say that the master has to feed the wife as well. On the other hand, if we would say only that he has to feed the wife, I would say the lav darka la duri. It's not the custom, it's not the right thing for a woman to go around knocking on doors and collecting money for herself. She's embarrassed to do this. Avubana the darkai la duri. But these children, that they have the possibility, and it is more common for them to go and knock on doors to get money for themselves, emaloi. So the master doesn't have to feed them. Tzriche, so the pasuk says that the master does. We learned in the Braise, going back to the halacha of Ritzia piercing the ear of the Eved. So the pasuk says that the way it should be done is V'rotza adoinov es oznoi. So what does it say? V'loka chasamartzeya v'nesato be'oznoi ubadelas. So the Gemara is going to explain the expression of this pasuk be'oznoi and ubadelas. Ilu nemar oznoi badelas. If we would say oznoi without the base, oznoi badelas, the ear in the door. By the door saying the base in the door, then I would say Yitker Keneged Oznoi Bedelas, that what you're piercing is not the ear. You're basically drilling a hole into the doorpost right near the ear. The ear of the person is there, of the Eved is there, but you're really drilling into because it says Badelas, you're piercing the ear, the door that is. Delas in, so you're piercing the doorpost, but Oznoi Loi, not the ear. Frekta Gemara, would I really think that that's possible? If it would not say clearly ba oznoi, that you have to pierce the ear, but v'haksiv, there's another pasuk where it says v'rotza adoinov es oznoi b'matzeya, that you have to drill, you have to pierce the ear itself. So it says clearly that you're piercing the ear. So why does it have to emphasize here in this pasuk ba oznoi and badelas? Ella hayisi yomer, I would say as follows: Yirtzeena la'oizeh ma'avroi. You begin piercing the ear from the outside. You start piercing, but you don't pierce the ear through and through. Then you put the ear near the door. And then then you continue piercing into the door, but you don't pierce the ear itself through and through. So yeah, there's one pasuk that Taka says you're piercing the ear, but that's only on the outside. But then the conclusion is into the door. That you have to pierce the ear and into the door. What does this mean? Why does it say both the bases for the ear, for the oizen and for the deles? How is the piercing done? You place the ear on the doorpost, and then you have to pierce the ear until you're piercing all the way into the door. So it goes through and through into the door. Now deles, when it says here the pasuk that you place the ear on the door and that's how you pierce the ear, Shemei Ani, I would think this could include Bein Akura, Bein Shein Akura, whether this is a door that's standing upright or a door that's not. Talmud Loimar, so therefore the pasuk over here says the term mezuzah, that it says Azmar Adelas Oyala mezuzah. So the pasuk mentions mezuzah, so mezuzah is the doorpost, the way it stands up. Ma mezuzah mu'umed, the doorpost, the mezuzah is up. Avdelas nami mu'umed, the lashon of delas is also when the door is standing. That's the way that Itzia is done. The Gemara concludes here the whole entire sugya of Avodim with the drashas that was said over here regarding the Ritzia. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He darshan this pasuk like a chaymer, which means like a pouch that has either precious gems in it or a good besamim with a good fragrance. So he darshaned as follows: why is the ear singled out from all the different limbs of the body, that if he wants to remain an eved, so we pierce the ear? So this is some kind of an einish over here for him wanting to remain an eved. So the einish is dafka in the ear, because the Eibishter says The ear that heard the voice of Hashem saying at Har Sinai, B'shor shamarti, Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim, v'lo yavodim la'avodim, that Yidden are my avodim, and they're not avodim to another Yid, which is also the Eved for Hashem. So it's interesting, the Lashon of the Gemara, that this is the voice of Hashem at Har Sinai, Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim. The pasuk Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim is a pasuk in Parshas Bahar. So the Eibush didn't actually say this in the Aseres Adibris, but it's included in Anoichi Avai Lekecha Shetzisicha Meretz Mitzrayim Mi Beis Avodim, that the Eibush took you out from the Beis Avodim of Mitzrayim and made you his Eved. So that's what the Gemara is bringing a different pasuk, but it refers to that as well. What the Eibush said at Har Sinai. And he went and acquired a master for himself, Yirotza. So therefore, his ears deserve to be pierced. So the Mefarshim ask on this. So why isn't his ear pierced when he gets sold as an Eved the first time? Especially if it's he that chose to be sold as an Eved, if he sells himself. So the Rebbe Nesicha speaks about this Gemara here and this Nekuda and says that the point is that when he sells himself the first time, it's possible that something happened that was out of his control and he couldn't do anything about it, so therefore he never had no money yet to sell himself. But now, after all these years, he got paid for this and he worked. And then after 6 years, he's able to go free, and he asks and he says, "Ahafti." It's not so. He says, "Ahafti," so then he wants to be an Eved against what the Eibush said, that a Yid is supposed to be the Eibush's Eved, not be Eved. So over here, this is Megala Lemafreya, that when he got sold from the beginning, he wasn't only because of his matzav that he was in, but because he wanted to be an Eved over here for this master and marry this Shivcha Kananis and so on. So therefore, Dafka now, we're doing the Ritziyah for this that he bought a master for himself.
What is the Mefarshim
What?
What is the Mefarshim on that question?
The similar pshatim before. This is the pshat that Rebbe says in Lekut Sichos Chelik Yud Aleph Parshas Mishpatim. V'Rab Shimon beRabbi Hayedoirish is a mikra. He also dash in this pasuk Kimin Chaymer, like beautifully tied, like a pouch of precious gems or besamim. Manishtan adelis mezuzah mikol kelim shebebayis. Why do we single out the door and the mezuzah where the actual ritziyah is done from all other places in the house? Omer HaKadosh Baruch. So the Eibush says, Delis mezuzah shayu eidim b'Mitzrayim b'shosha pesachti al amashkei v'al shtei mezuzahs. They were the witnesses when the Eibishter saved Yidden at Makas Pecheres and he jumped over the doorpost and V'amarti. And then the Eibishter said, Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim, v'lei avodim la'avodim. That the Yidden are taken out of Mitzrayim to be slaves for Hashem and not for anyone else. V'aitzeisim avdus l'cheres. And I took Yidden out from avdus to be free to serve Hashem. V'holach zeh v'kona adon la'atzmai. And this individual went and bought a master that is for himself. You should also be pierced, his ear should be pierced in front of these witnesses, in front of the doorpost that saw when Yidden were taken out of Mitzrayim. So the Rebbe teaches here, this Gemara, when you get to an Eved, that this could also be taught regarding every single person, just like there's the 6 years that an Eved works, and then the 7th year he goes free. The same thing is also, when you get to a Yid in this world, that 6 days of the week he works in Uvdin Dechayel in the world, and then on the 7th day he goes free on Shabbos. And when a Yid refuses to go free on Shabbos, and his mind is so engrossed in Olam Hazeh that he doesn't want to disconnect from the Inyanim of Olam Hazeh. So here this is the Inyan of Ritziyah, to remind the person that it's time to disconnect. It's time to focus in into the 7th day, into Shabbos. We begin here, the Mishnah, which will discuss the halachas, the kinyan, and so on, of an Eved Kanani. Zok the Eilige Mishnah, Eved Kanani nikne bekesef ubishtar ubechazaka. An Eved Kanani is acquired to his master in 3 ways, through kesef, or shtar, or chazaka. Chazaka will be explained in the Gemara. What exactly is the chazaka regarding an Eved Kanani? The kaines atzmai, he could acquire his freedom back from his master bekesef, with money, but it has to be al yidei acherim. Someone else is going to have to buy him out from his master. He cannot give any from his money to his master. He can't own any money. Whatever he owns goes to his master. So someone else has to buy him out. But shtar, that his master gives him to free him, that the shtar gives to the Eved Kanani himself. Sorry, 1 second, went down the line. Divrei Rab Meir. This is Rab Meir's opinion that kesef is through another and shtar is himself. The Chachamim say bekesef al yidei atzmai. When he frees himself with kesef, it could be even through kesef that he has. Ubishtar al yedei acherim. By shtar, it's someone else that receives the shtar for him. What not? Chachamim clarified regarding kesef when he himself is redeeming himself with the kesef. Ubulvad sheyeh kesef mishal acherim. But the money though doesn't start from. It's not his money. Someone else has to give him money, and he has to give it to him al menas that the master should have no rishus in this money. It belongs now to the eved, and then he's able to go and free himself with this money. We'll see in the Gemara. The Gemara will explain the machlekes here between Rab Meir and the Chachamim. Sagt the Gemara Minala. From where do we know the three kinyanim that the Mishnah mentions? Kesef, Shtar, and Chazaka for an Evet Kanani. Dichsiv, because the pasuk says by an Evet Kanani that this Nachalta Meislam Levnechem Achrechem L'Reshes Achuzah, that the Evet Kanani it becomes an inheritance, just like a property that a father owns and the children inherit. The same thing is also with the Evet Kanani that the children inherit. So we see here Ikisha Nakasov L'Stei Achuzah. We compare an Evet Kanani to a property. Ma'as de'achuza nikna v'kesel b'shtar b'chazake. These three kinyanim work, as we'll learn over here later in the Masechta, another few blot. You can acquire a property with kesel, shtar, and chazake. Af Evet Kanani, similar an Evet Kanani that's compared to a property, nikna v'kesel b'shtar b'chazake, can be acquired in one of these three ways. There's a Rashi over here that tells us why every Evet Kanani is called an Evet Kanani. An Evet Kanani is really an Evet that's a goy, not lav daka as a Kanani. So Rashi here says that because by Canaan, the pasuk says here Noach gave him a klala and called him an Evet Avodim. Evet Avodim, I've got the whole pasuk over there. So because Dafka Canaan is called Evet Avodim, so the ultimate concept of Evet is by a Kanani. So therefore we refer to every Evet that's a guy as an Evet Kanani. Okay, continuing the Gemara. If we're comparing an Evet Kanani to a property that's sold, so maybe I should compare them and say, just like a property returns to its original owner when Yovel comes, Evet Kanani Evet Kanani should go back to the Bailim. Really, he should acquire his own freedom when Yovel comes. Talmud Loimar, Loilam Bem Taveidu. By Evet Kanani, the Torah says, Loilam Bem Taveidu, and there the Loilam literally means forever. That he goes, that it's an inheritance to the children and so on. Tane, and a Braisa we learned, Af B'Chalipin. You can acquire an Evet Kanani through the kinyan of Chalipin, which is when the buyer gives the seller a handkerchief, he lifts up the handkerchief and that creates a kinyan, as we had earlier in the Masechta. So what's with the Tana of our Mishnah? Why doesn't the Tana of our Mishnah mention this kinyan of Chalipin? So the Gemara explains, the Tana Didan Milse, the Lesebe Metaltalin Katani. Our Tana brings up the three kinyanim that cannot work by metaltalin. The three kinyanim of kesef, shtar, and chazake only work regarding karka, regarding a property. So over there, it's comparing the evet to the karka. But milsa, the isa b'metaltalin, chalipin, that works with karka, but also works with metaltalin, like katani. At the Tana of our Mishnah, it doesn't mention. Shmuel said, there's another kinyan that works. Evet kanani nikne b'mishicha. You can acquire an Evet Kanani through Meshicha. Meshicha is the kinyan, we'll see also soon over here in the Hamshech of the Gemara, is a kinyan that is usually made for when you want to use for metaltalin. So when you pull it, you bring it towards you into your rishos, that's the kinyan of Meshicha. So over here, regarding Evet Kanani, you could also be kaina an Evet Kanani with Meshicha. Now, Keitzad, what's the Meshicha? Takfai. You pull him towards you, like you force him against his will. You force him to come to you, or ba and he comes to you, you acquire him. Now, however, if you call him and he calls to you, then like kana, you're not going to be kaina with this. That's not called meshicha, because then he's coming on his own. Really, it has to be dafka if you mamish pull him. Okay, the Gemara will explain that soon. But first, the Gemara asks, now, the fact that in our Mishnah it did not mention meshicha as one of the kinyanim, even though Shmuel says it works, so we understand because we said already before, milsa disibim metaltali like katani. Our Mishnah is not mentioning a kind of kinyan that works by metaltalin. Only mentions kesef, shtar, and chazaka, which is by karka. The less of the metaltalin, which is kesef, shtar, and chazaka, katani. That's what the Mishnah mentions. But the Tana of the Braise that mentioned chalipin, which is by metaltalin, nisni meshicha. Why didn't he say that af b'chalipin and meshicha as well? One answers, Ki Ketani, when the Braise says Chalipin, he's mentioning Chalipin, which is a milsa, the Isa Bein B'Mekarki, or Bein B'Metaltal. That's a cane that works by both, Karka and Metaltalin. So it works by Evet as well. Meshicha, which is the Metaltal Isa. Meshicha, when you're pulling something, that's only applicable to Metaltalin, but Mekarka less, it doesn't exist by Karka. So like Ketani, the Tana of the Braise does not mention that. Now going back to what it said before, what Shmuel said, how Meshicha is done for the Evet Kanani. So Keitzad, he said, Tokfa you ba etzloi, if you grabbed him basically, and you pulled him towards you, Kone. Then the Meshicha works, you kaine. Karoi uba etzloi, you called him, and he came towards you, so then like Kone. Doesn't work, you're not kaine him. Fragt the Gemara, why is that? The Karoi, loi, by Meshicha. If you call and he comes, it should not work. But Vatanya, we learned in a Braise how kinyanim work for animals. And the Braise there says as follows: Keitzad b'mesira. How does the kinyan of mesira work, which is by a behemoth? This is talking about a big behemoth, gasa, and you give it over. So how does this work? Achza b'talfa. If you grabbed it by its hoof, or beside it by its hair, b'olchav shala, by a saddle, b'shlif shala, by a package that's on it, b'prumbiyish, b'piyah, a bit that the animal has in its mouth, or b'zuksha b'tzavara, the bell that it has on its neck, kana. So then you kain it. Keitzad b'meshicha, then how does meshicha work? Which is similar to mesira. What's meshicha? Kaidala, if he called the animal, and v'hiba, and it came towards him, he hit it with a stick, and the animal ran in front of him. So, as soon as, whether by calling it or by hitting it, it lifted up its hand or feet, its legs in front or in the back, so you're going to be kainet. Rabasi, Ravasi, or others said, Rav Acha said that it's not enough that it just lifted off its hands or feet, but has to walk at least the size of its own body, then you kain it. But the point is, we see here by an animal that you kain it, you call it and it comes towards you, that's Meshicha. So why by a Eved is it different? When you call him and he comes, it's not Meshicha. So Amri, the answer, there's a difference. Beheme adaita de marazla. Beheme that has no mind of its own. So when you call it, so then he's only coming because you called it. So therefore you kaina. But Eved adaita de nafshei kazal. An Eved has his own mind. So when you're calling him and he comes towards you, it's his decision. He's walking now. So it's not an act of a kinyan where he's becoming subjugated to you. So therefore you have to mamish grab him and pull it. Ravashi, so Ravashi said, but an Evet Katan, so if so, we understand now, an Evet that's a Katan and doesn't have a mind of his own, we'll have a similar halach to a Behemoth, that if you call the Evet Katan and he comes towards you, that will be the kinyan of Meshicha. Ton Rabbanon, and a Braisa we learned, that explains how the kinyan of Chazakah takes place. Keitzad b'chazaka. What is the chazaka for an Evet Kanani? In a property, the chazaka is when you dig in the property, you improve the property, you put up a fence around it, that's chazaka. So what is this chazaka when it comes to an Evet Kanani? So basically, the chazaka always means that when you treat the property like yours, and in this case, when you treat the Evet like an Evet of yours, that itself is the chazaka. So what does that mean? So either hit the leiminalai, this Evet begins acting like an Evet. He unties your shoes for you. He comes and brings your clothing for you to the bathhouse. Or if shita, he undresses you, he washes you, sachai, anoints you, girdai, scrubs your back, hilbishai, dresses you, and ilai, puts on your shoes, higbiyai, you lift up your master for something that he needs. Kanai. So your slave, by the act of serving you, so you're kind of the slave. That's the chazakah. Amar Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says in this, Lo tehei chazakah gedoyle me'agba. Chazakah should not be stronger than the kinyan of agba. Shagba kaine b'chol mokim. Hagba is a kinyan that works all over. Okay, so now it's not clear exactly what Rab Shimon is saying. The Gemara asks, Mai ka'oma. What exactly does Rab Shimon mean to say with this? The Tanakama also said higbiyoi. What's Rab Shimon saying when he says that agba works? Amar Ravashi, so Ravashi explains, the Tanakama was saying is, if the Eved is serving his master and his master is trying to reach something high up and he lifts up his master, so then you served your master, so that's chazaka your kaina. Higbiyoi rabbi loi, if the master lifts up the Eved, then loi kana, then he's not kind of the Eved through this. So on this, Amar Rab Shimon, loi tei chazaka gedoyle me'agba, the kinyan of chazaka, which is all these different ways that the slave is serving the master, should not be greater than agba, which is when the master would pick up the Evet, shagba kaine b'chol makim. And agba is a kinyan that works in all places by all kinds of metaltalin, so therefore over here by an Evet as well, if the master picks up the Evet, so then he's going to be kaina. Okay, so the Gemara says in this, hashta da amris. Now that you say that if a slave picks up his master, that the master is kaina him, so elamayata. If so, you can make the argument and say shivcha kananis. Tikne bebiyah, a shifcha kananis, a maidservant, which has the same halachas to be kaina, like an evet kanani, so the master should be able to acquire her through biyah. Because in the act of biyah, in marital relations over here, she's picking up her master. That's what happens. Says the Gemara, you can't compare the two. Because ki kamrinon zenene v'zemitzdayer. If a slave is picking up his master, so he's exerting effort by serving his master, and the master has the benefit, and the eved is schwitzing. So this shows that he's acquiring his master, serving his master. But by biyah though, zenene v'zenene, since the shivcha kananis is having a no like the master, it's not an act that shows that the master is acquiring the shivcha kananis that is. So the Gemara asks on this, Shaloi kedarka ma'ikalamema, but if the biyah is Shaloi kedarka, not in the normal way, so over here the shivcha kananis lifts up the master and there's no hana in this for her, so in such a case, there should be a kinyan here in this. Amarav achai bar ade de min acha man lemelon de lav hana isla letarvayu. Who says that there isn't hana over here for both of them, for the master and for her, and therefore again the point is it's not an act that shows that the master is acquiring, and therefore the kinyan does not take effect. There has to be a hagbah that shows that the eved is serving the master. Huh? Oh, sorry, one more thing. Yeah, one more line here. When it comes to biyah, so there's kedarka and shaloi kedarka, whether in the normal way or not normal way. So we have a pasuk that mishkevei loshen rabin that compares the two. Hikisha kasa kedarka shaloi kedarka. We always compare kedarka to shaloi kedarka, and therefore it has the same halacha that for both of them it's not kaina.